game.
Okay.
Both.
We'll keep it casual. We'll all be
Casual.
gonna,
That's
yeah.
good.
So
We're going live?
yes, we are.
Cool.
Okay, so okay, we are live, I believe. I'm gonna check the rest, and yeah, we should be live everywhere now. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our followers, and I guess welcome to our guests. So this is the first of a cycle of live shows we're organizing here at Hikaya Publishing in partnership with the Intergalactic Festival in Lyon, which is the main one of the main sci-fi fantasy literacy event of the city and of the country. And we are going to have a bunch of live shows all along September's with different themes, with different types of people from the publishing writing industry. And we're beginning today with a live talk about cultural and literary heritage. And we have three wonderful guests with us to speak about this. First, I would like to introduce Aislinn Sara Benatti, Italian writer, English translator, narrative technique teacher. You can correct me if I'm mistaken.
All good.
And author of a urban fantasy trilogy, and more recently a retelling of Arian's myth from the Greek mythology. Good. Welcome to Yasmine Djebel, who is one of our big French author in the fantasy environment here in France. Yasmine, who published at Rajo Publishing her first book, which is entitled Sirène et l'oiseau maudit. So Sirène and the Cursed Bird in a rough translation. Hugely successful this year, and works as a
physiotherapist.
Physiotherapist in Paris. Yes, and I'll be your host for today. I'm Romain Delplanque. I'm one of the co-founders of Hikaya Publishing, and I hope everybody will forgive the English. None of us is a native English speaker. We are desperately trying not to write in English, but it's still the common tongue and koine, and we are going to use it to talk among us today. So sorry, folks. We're going to have to deal with English for now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to introduce this by, this kind of introduction question. For each of you, if you had to define your career, your style, or yourself in 3 words, what would you choose to say to our viewers?
Who's gonna start?
You start.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not introduce Luca.
Yeah, Luca.
That's awesome.
You wanna say?
That's okay.
That was not my place to say it.
I am so I'm so nervous. Okay, Luca, with the most experienced of all of us by so far. Very prolific writer in Italy. So many books. I won't list them all, but known for urban fantasy trilogies, retelling of the Dante's Mytho trilogy, Ora dei Dannati, The Hour of the Damned, which is a wonderful trilogy. I know it because I worked on translating some chapters a while ago. So yeah, incredible book. Also translator for the Italian publishing industry. And what can I say? Also 2 essays, 2 short stories, 2 short stories book, 4 one-shots. Yeah, one of the most read fantasy writers in Italy. I'm sorry, I have to. Yeah, no, yeah, that's kind of also why, sorry for sorry for almost forgetting that.
True
And you have
life. This
and
is
you-
reality. It's authentic.
and you have a degree in religion history. So we all have a. Now we're all there. Yeah, 3. If you all had 3 words to introduce yourself, what would you choose them to be?
Well, usually on my social, I use a very simple sentence, Weaver of Dreams, which is in a way connected to the pseudonym, the pen name that I've used for my urban fantasy books, which is Aislinn, whatever, and which means dream, vision in Gaelic. So it refers both, obviously, to writing stories, inventing stories and worlds, and also to my to building up my real life dreams, one brick after one brick.
Beautiful. Weaver of Dreams. Very nice.
Well, for me, sometimes people say that I am a bit too cynical around this kind of topics, but I think it's something that comes with age. And I would mention dreams too, but in a different way. In 3 words, defining my life, I would say paid for daydreaming.
That's nice. Okay. Yasmine?
Yeah, so I was going the easy way, like French fantasy writer, but it's like no fun, so I tried to find something else.
No,
It's like heritage, retelling, and identity, because I'm like in a perpetual identity crisis, and my heritage is like the base of my work, and retelling, not like in retelling of tales, but to gain a certain freedom of how you view yourself and how people view you.
beautiful. Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Have 3 very specific ways to define yourself. So this the theme of this discussion, cultural and literary heritage. That was one of our first ideas in organizing these talks, and we were really happy to have you 3 because that's something that emerged from each of your books. It's like it's absolutely it's absolutely full of reference to a lot of very specific ambient and cultural backgrounds. And so, first of all, to kind of define the different terms of the subject, how would you guys define what cultural and literary heritages mean to you and how they intertwine when you write? Would it be about themes? Would it be about style or ways to think the story? How would you say these heritages work with your writings?
Again,
We
Okay.
defined an order.
because you're not the first.
Huh?
But anyway, it's a complex reality, if you want. To me, it's always been a mixture of obviously the culture and the literature of my country, and it could be of the country of anyone, the country in which someone grows up and live. and that combined with all the culture and references and literature and folklore in which we are immersed, that comes from the whole world, because nowadays, obviously, globalization. So all of us have grown up with obviously our own culture, our own traditions, our own literary masterpieces, and all that, but also with the influence of I don't know, American movies and sitcoms, or Viking folklore, or Tolkien, and all that. So it's always a blend of these two things. The percentage of one thing and the other, it depends. It's very personal to me. Like it depends on your personal tastes and obsessions and interests and themes. So it's a mixture of influences on all the aspects that you mentioned: style, and themes, and stories, and the way you write characters and all of that.
And very concretely for your work, your relationship with your work, and the way you study narrative techniques and writings, both in personal and professional life. How would you say it's for you? It works in a particular way. Does it change every time with every books?
Well, it's certainly it develops with every book. For example, I started more writing urban fantasy, which is set in Italian cities, in Milan, or in the smaller cities, a small city where I have been born. And so that is very linked to the culture I live in, and with characters that face the problems of my country, and all that. But I'm also passionate about European folklore, from vampires to fairies, and all that. And so in my stories, I blend these kind of things. The last book I published, as you said, is a retelling of the myth of Ariadne, the Minotaur, the labyrinth, and all that. And that is rooted in my classical studies, because classical mythology is very important in Italian schools. And in high school, I studied Latin and Greek. So it's always been something that has always been part of me. So in that sense, I like to blend talking about problems and themes that are connected to my country, but also touching the things that I've always liked as a reader. So from as I said, from vampires to fairies to all that, I like to mix the things.
Okay, so the way I get it, it's also because the way I understand it in Italy, it's very rooted in education, the learning about the classicals, learning about Dante, learning about mythology. And so, that's also something that has to do with, I don't know, childhood or the early stages of life and the early stages of getting to know literature. I'm saying that, of course, that allows me to cross to Luca's work, which is also deeply rooted in these references to the classics. Do not hesitate to intervene, the three of you. Also, it's
I was just
to have a
conversation. Waiting in line for my.
Make it stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's much more difficult to stop me than to have me start. No, I was thinking about the list you made at the beginning, like style, theme, and so on. I think style is the part is less touched by the different countries in which we live and in which we write, because the style we write, speculative fiction, in our present, in our century, is a sort of standard. We read it since we were children. We grew up with that. So the language may change, and obviously the style changes with from person to person. That is obvious. but the overall style of how we create stories, how we tell stories, especially in speculative fiction, I think it's quite standard. It's more or less the same for all of
Writing
us.
manuals usually are American or English manuals that get translated or
But
not.
you are the one of writing manuals. You know that I am not very fond of them.
I like the craft. It's like if you're a football player, you like to watch football games. So
And while for me, at least, is the idea of how can I call it? I would say appearance, but it's not the right word. But now I'm trying to explain myself. Every time they ask me about every time they ask me a very specific question, which is, why do you write fantasy and not mainstream literature? And I always give the same answer, which is, if the experience of human beings are always the same, no, in any kind of story, because we are human beings, we always feel the same, we go through always the same stories. And if you imagine them as theater plays, is the difference. Mainstream literature is you have a chest full of theatrical costumes for your actors, while fantasy literature is like having a wardrobe as long as the horizon. You can put any kind of possible costume on your actors. And this is not just cosmetic, this changes a lot. You can change a lot of theatrical play, just changing the costumes and the way the play is set in a historical moment or in a particular social environment. And the same is for literature, in my opinion. So if we put, and I do it, if we put our cultural national spirit in the clothes of the story, in the appearance, in the details, it's much more than cosmetic. It's gonna affect everything in the story. It's gonna give a very specific connotation to it.
So, yeah. I yes.
that's a cat.
Yeah,
It's not a ghost.
the ghost.
Okay, cats are gonna come by. They always do. Yasmine, I have to, ask you what you think on this subject and about what Luca just
Yeah.
said, because
Yeah, what said Lucas was very interesting. I wasn't like quite. I didn't agree at first. Was like, okay. So, in terms of style, I don't think we have the same alors, rapport
relationship
to the language when you have one or three of 2 or 3 languages, and the languages you were raised with, it carries a lot of things like body language, how you view the world, how you do humor, how you insult or curse someone. Like it affects everything. And I didn't notice at first, but people told me after when that I had like a style. I was like, what, you write in certain kind of way, and it was just translating things from Arabic, from Algerian Arabic in French. Like I like this expression, I like this way of cursing someone, I like this joke, but I have to to find a way to retell it so it can work in French, and that work, it creates like something new. So
you have kind of a precise example you're thinking of?
Maybe curses, because in Algeria, like when you insult someone, like you use a lot of you curse someone great grandfather, or you use a lot of animal curses. Name of
Italian.
Yeah.
Same in
Yeah.
Italian.
but yeah, and you don't do it in French, like you don't curse the same way. And images, I like, in North Africa and in Arabic-speaking country, poetry is not like a thing for the bourgeoisie. It's not you read poetry, you go to spectacle to hear it, and it's not something weird. And often singers, like when they work with a poet and they rewrite the poem to sing it, so people know poetry. It's not like in France, like something like very
Yeah, it's very
snob.
very old-fashioned in France.
Yeah, old-fashioned. Like
Unfortunately,
no, poetry is everywhere, even in religion, like the Quran. So you have like a bank of image to describe things, but it's not like you don't describe colors the same way, you don't describe love the same way. So I like to pick some kind of image style, and you mix it with French because I love the French language, and you have something else. So yeah, I think this cultural that double identity like influenced my way of writing. And for the theme, I don't bring it from Algeria. It's like the experience of someone who grew up in France. I was born in France. I grew up in France with parents that are not French, and it's it's a very French experience. When my character, are rambling about identity and their place in the world, that's not from Algerian folklore. So, and the question was about literary heritage, and I don't have that much of literary baggage. It's a lot of oral culture and bribes of it. Like, I remember stories, but sometimes it's the beginning, sometimes it's the end, sometimes like just course of action, I don't know. And sometimes you have sometimes people don't remember exactly and they don't know, so you have to so when I write my story, sometimes it's a bit not as formulatic as you can see in the manual. I love reading about craft, and sometimes I need it because I tend to go everywhere, because that's the way I was around stories, like you pick this, you pick that.
yeah. Just a small apartheid. We are live on both Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So followers, dearies, you can do not hesitate to ask questions to our guests. And we are slightly, there's a small delay in transmission apparently, but we have someone dedicated to gather the questions and sending them to me, so we can answer them at one point of the talk. So you've been
Before we move on, I want to say I envy Jasmine a lot, because what I got from what she was explaining is that you basically, Jasmine, you start from a base of two languages when you write. So your writing is sort of conversation between the two languages, trying to pass the things from one language from the other. And I'm not in that position because I just know Italian and English, and it must be such a fascinating process. I'm really envious.
That's a pretty way to put it. Thank you very much.
If do any one of you want to add something to this subject, or comment?
I want to rebound on Lucas. Sorry, I will explain it much more. But about costumes, when something is authentic, the word authentic is a little overrated, but you don't, when your culture infuse in your books, like it's not a question of costumes and like ethnic names. It infuses in everywhere, and and you can feel it. Maybe I will talk about it when we speak about Anglo-Saxon literature, American literature. So.
Yeah, I was also thinking that you were saying there were things, the things you say and don't say, and the time at which you say them differs from culture to culture. So story-wise, it means that two characters will not get the information at the same time in the story. So that can change a lot of things, actually. So that I think, we were talking about how it can influence story pacing and this kinds of thing. And, that's also an interesting point. In one culture, two characters could say something to each other and it would be evidently normal, and in another it would be rude, so they would not say it. They would wait, or so. That's just something I was wondering. That's something you so that's also we're talking about the underlying process of being in the book. I also wanted to ask you if you sometimes, if you guys do have the explicit will to make a piece of cultural heritage known to the public. Is it a willing process to make something known, and because you think it does not get all the light it should? Or are you more in the process of just using this heritage you have and you love to bring forth something that you would say is more personal, is more individual from you?
I think, at least for me, the two things go together. Like, obviously, the kind of folklore or literature that I love, I will use it and express the inspiration I gather from that, also to talk about personal themes and interests and questions and stuff that is very personal, and it's related also, yes, one of the cat, or at least almost a cat. One of the to talk about these kind of things. But sometimes there's also the pleasure of talking about legends and folklore and part of this cultural heritage that is not so well known to the public. I can give a couple of examples. I wrote one urban fantasy that was set in Italy nowadays, but it was inspired by the legend of the fairy Melusine, which is probably more known abroad in the rest of Europe than in Italy per se. And obviously, I used the story to make the legend known, but I also made modifications and used it to talk about other things that I was interested into. Or if I think about the books I wrote that were inspired by vampire folklore, I like to I like to go to the origin of things. So more than novels about vampires, I like to read about the old documents from the 1600 or so, and I like to use details that are not so well known, because they're not the kind of details you usually see in movies or where you have sparkly vampires or something like that. And so I like to draw from things that yes are known, but also use details and stuff that maybe can surprise the public and the readers don't know.
Me? Okay. I'm obsessed by local details. It's to the point that I've been told more than once, Luca, in your stories, the city in which the story is set is another character. It's a character like the other, because I am obsessed by using. But most of my stories are set in Milan, which is the city I know the most. And I've set stories in Milan, in the present, in the past, in the Middle Ages, in ancient Roman times. So you see that I am actually a bit obsessed by this. But to the point that if I want to put a certain building in my story, I will go and research the story of that building, if there are stories, if there are legends, if there are symbols around that thing, and I'm gonna put those things in my story. So, no, yeah, that's the real idea of I have to convey everything that I can of the place, of the flavor, of the myths, of the folklore, of everything about the place I am putting my story in. Because I now I am writing mostly historical fantasy or literary fantasy, but in the past I wrote a lot of urban fantasy, like Sara, and I grew up reading American and English urban fantasy. And I love the idea that those stories were set in real cities, but they were cities so far from me. They were New York, London, Los Angeles, and this kind. So when I start to write urban fantasy, I say, okay, I want to do the same, but I want to do in the place I know. No, I want to convey the same idea and show that Milan can be as exciting as New York.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true. There's a part of Italian writers that like to use foreign settings like New York and all that, or Paris or London. And it can be done, obviously, if you're good, if you know the town, the city for real, because otherwise the risk is that you're gonna write something that is gonna be stereotypical or fake, as
the tourist eye.
Yeah.
The tourist eye.
Like the houses are made of cardboard, like in the old Western movies, instead of real houses, and which is why when I wrote urban fantasy, me too, I used Italian cities, but also because obviously I will use characters that have that are grown up in my country, so that I have a shared culture, a shared mentality, and all that. And I can, what can I say about the American culture and everything, just what I learned from movies and books. It's never going to be as deep as what I can say about my own culture.
Okay.
I'm Team Lucas, and I'm rather passionate with my cultural heritage, and it's like it's not very, maybe not patient, but rage, when people say to you that you have, I will quote a French politician, un pays sans âme et sans histoire, a country without a soul and without history. When you don't exist in the world of fantasy, you want to bring something and say, look, like it. I want to be part of the legend. I want to be part of the adventure. And when you have like just bribes, you want to complete the puzzle, sometimes with magic. That's the magic of SFFF, so science fiction and fantasy. Even if you don't have all the complete piece, even if you don't have all the elements, because colonization, because civil war, or acculturation, or religion, you can put it back. And I had like the need to show the world, like, look, that's beautiful. It deserves attention. You can do a lot with it. Yeah, I was pretty angry when I wrote my book. I needed that. I needed to exist, and that it doesn't fade with time, because the story, the jewelry, everything comes from my grandparents, and like they all now. My grandmother died when I was in high school, and I had like, if they die, like, and it's mostly oral culture and oral transmission. Like, I can do. We are we letting this die? Like, seriously, we can't do something with it. A part of just a war story and colonization story. We can't we do like some funny stuff? So yeah, the I write to do that, and unfortunately, when I do that, something personal comes. But it's not a matter of will. I don't want uh, mm, to put something personal in my books, but it's inevitably the case. So, yeah.
Yes, that's from what I remember. There's a very that's something that I found quite strong in the beginning of your book, is that there is an oppressed category of people who lost to war, and the first thing we know about them is that they are forbidden to learn how to write and read, and they are forbidden to be apprentices in workshops. So they have to, basically their mind is being, their soul is being ripped off, and I found that was kind of, yeah, there was I like you say, an anger to that, to this, to how you were writing this.
And it's very funny, because when I'm here, like in France, it's like, yeah, I can talk about acculturation, like no, assimilation. The Yeah, in France, like, you have to. We don't really like double culture. You have to melt in the national narrative, and to be a real French citizen, you have to like let back everything. That can be a critic of that, but that can be also a critic in Algeria. Like, we had like a civil war with religion extremists, and all the old tale, the old superstition. Like, my grandmother, for example, was tattooed in her face and her arm, and it was like a very old tradition, like 2000 years of tradition, and in each tattoo you have like a very old story, and you have saints, you have different cult, snake cult that was like forgotten by the Islamic propaganda, and that too could be that's a critic of both, and it depends the public, so I choose my fight. And that's what's very interesting in fantasy, because in the book you have like people who have a cult about the sun, and some about the moon and the stars, and what do you put in it? Like, what does it mean? I don't know. You have to choose. And it's a good way to deal with censorship, which is a very difficult things to deal with in Algeria.
Good strategy. Unless we do have some questions from people on the different chats. So if one of you want to react one last time to this point, please do. Otherwise, I can start reading some of the questions we have.
Yeah, the question.
No? Okay. Yeah. We have Noemi, who says that some languages have words for emotions others don't. For example, I heard that Japanese has a word for the emotion you feel when someone is leaving your house. You are both happy to find yourself alone again and nostalgic about the presence of your guest. So she assumed that language and culture are influencing styles this way. kind of what we were talking about earlier, in the fact that certain people in certain languages will say things that they would simply not say in, it's a social thing, actually. So so it impacts the rhythm. That may be more of a translator questions.
Well,
yeah, exactly. I can say, like, obviously we both translate novels and essays from English to Italian, and just to make one example, there are English words that in one word they can express concepts that we have to explain with a whole sentence in Italian. There are ways to bend the Italian words to express pejorative or giving a cuter quality to a thing and everything, which English doesn't have. So there's all these little differences that we see every day when we translate. And yes, it's just one example.
It's the main difference in this is that English is a synthetic language, while Neo-Latin languages, so Italian, French, and so on, are analytical languages. So it's a different way to see the world. Like, if you think in a language which is synthetic, you have this kind of holistic way to see the reality around you. If we think in our languages, it's more like taking of every single part of reality, put it in a list, like analyze and separate everything. And when it comes to feelings, to emotions, this could be appalling in its results, because I remember I have a friend who lived, Italian friend, who lived 10 years in Norway for a job. And when she was up there, she went into therapy, and she said Norwegian is the worst language in the world to have therapy, because they don't have words for feelings. They have words to describe every possible thing. And I could not explain what I was feeling.
I will add one more thing, if I can. As a writing teacher, I read also a lot of unpublished novels or things that young people write. And it's, if you want, one bad side of globalization, as in nowadays in Italy, a lot of young readers in particular read directly in English, either from fictions or books that are not published in our country. And I see more and more the influence of the English style on our language, which means shorter sentences. Basically, the punctuations is getting really, really poor and simplified. Which works in English because it's good for that kind of language, but it's making Italian language poorer in a way, from what I can see. And so, as much as I've read, obviously, English authors, American authors, a lot, both in translation and in the original languages. That's one of the things that I find different in my writing, because I try to maintain that richness and that maybe more complex flow of the prose when I write. Just to make an example.
I don't know that much Italian, but I know traduttore, traditore.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yes, exactly.
When I started to write, like 4 or 5 years ago, I stopped reading in English because of that, because of it, because I sensed that I was like thinking in English, and it was not my intent. And when I start listening to Arabic and poetry, it was more conscious exercise, but and I had to fight to not write the English way, find my own voice, and it's very hard when you have a lot of material in English, and you have and it's easier to find the information or books that interests you in English. So yeah.
It's kind of getting in the way.
Yeah, getting in the way. That's it.
That's I actually there is another questions we might go to from there. I think Stefano said, speaking about style, may we say that the tendency of uniforming it may be seen as an idiosyncrasy that becomes a limit once a certain style becomes kind of mandatory. I think Stefano talks about the standard Anglo-Saxon fantasy, speculative fiction style or script doctor style, as far as storytelling is concerned, that is tended to be followed like by default by many writers or aspiring writers. And that's at Hikaya, that's a question we are asking ourselves every time. So I would be quite curious to know how you feel about this.
Well, it's obviously there's an influence, and there are techniques that we've studied or that we see applied in books, but also in TV series, for example, that simply work. The point is, you don't have to be an extremist in that, because luckily, I say luckily, literature is not mathematics. So it's there are things that you can bend, rules that you can change, expression that you can use, even if they're not by the book, by the manual, if you want, and they will work if they are well done. So the point to me is knowing what is available out there, knowing the technique, and then with a lot of practice, learning to use what you need to express what you really want to say, or discard what doesn't work for you.
So my tips, but it works in French. I don't know for Italian, but you have a lot of French-speaking country and French-speaking French. I don't know how to say the difference, the nuance in English, la francophonie and the rest.
French-speaking space.
Yeah, so you have a lot of literature from a lot of countries, and I like sometimes to think outside the box and really really enjoy the wealth, I think, of French language. I read from African author who can bend French in different ways, and I think it's a kind of antidote to standardization. Standardization.
Okay.
We don't have that, as in there are not many Italian-speaking countries. What we do, have is a great diversity in regional language, because from the north to the center to the south, each region, and I want to say each province, has their own lexicon, their own influence in the way language is built, verbs are used, and all that. So that is what we can have.
And I would like say one thing of English language, which is obviously we're spreading the word, and so you have lots of different countries speaking in English, and so different accents, and so different ways to express things. But actually, if you read the English literature coming from different countries, it's actually possible to perceive differences in the way they express the ideas. And so if I read a book written in the United States and one written in the UK, maybe they are not so different, but you can still perceive some differences. But if you take a book written in New Zealand or in South Africa, that is where you are gonna see the differences. one of my favorite fantasy author, is South African, even if she lives in the States. And I feel it in her way to use the language. So even in that huge melting pot that is the English language around the world, and the standard we were talking about, you can, yes, it's a pot, but you can still feel the different ingredients.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's has been our experience as well. Um, someone asks, but I think I like this one because it can lead me to another question. I think that's because of something you said, Yasmine. Someone asked if there is censorship in the French edition of your book.
No, because I have good publishers, but and that's why I keep working with them. Just sometimes they're like, Yasmine, like you are in your own little world when everyone understand your reference or your references, but we don't. You have to explain, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
Which one? Sorry.
Oh, I don't remember which one precisely, but um, sometimes it's obvious for me why a character don't speak like that or don't act like this, and I'm like, oh no, that's not obvious. So I have to explain, or sometimes I'm just like, no, that's not necessary. I was like just um, wondering, like, and sometimes when it's important, like, no, I want people to research or to be curious. It was like, and my editor was like, okay. So I did my research. It exists eventually. So you're right. We'll do. And I think it's difficult when you write for children and for a teenager, because I have always set this question, who I am writing for. I'm not writing for myself.
You mean sometimes the writer can be a little too how do they too much in his own references and
Yeah.
forget that.
It's obvious for me. I'm like, okay, I want to share this cultural heritage to people who don't have that same connection as me, who are like in needs of explanation, because when it's very hard when you have a double cultural mind, because for your parents or for your family, it's obvious that you understand. So they don't explain everything to you, because yeah, you're part of us, so you have to understand. Yeah, we don't have to explain. So you're like in this, and sometimes it's hard. I want people to explain to me, like, why do we do this? Why do we talk like this? Why? And I have like little answers. The tattoo, for example, is a good one, because my grandmother, she never spoke about them. And I had like little answers. Now that I write, my father, my family comes to me like, do you know this thing? Do you know this thing? But before, no. So like, yeah, you have to understand. Or that's not important. You know, that's what pagan things. Yeah. So I want to so now that I want to show people that this heritage is it's beautiful.
Okay, we lost
People.
you for a little bit. Sorry, I don't know. We lost the last 20 seconds.
I can repeat. Like I was saying that I want to show the beautiful part of my heritage, and I want to explain to people who doesn't know it. But I want to. The most important to me is to explain to people that share it, but don't have like the manual, because we don't give it to you at birth. Like that's how it works.
So the process of sharing your cultural heritage is also a process of decoding it yourself.
Yeah. I learned a lot of things. Like.
Because yeah, it's like that's an interesting point. Probably that's kind of the opposite of sorry to put it like that, but it's kind of the opposite of the classics that Luca and Aislinn have been working on, because those have been over decoded in like a thousand years of history. So that's kind of a reverse problem. You guys have to recode it, give it a new code perhaps, or
I will say that the good things about classics, and the reason why they are classics, is because they keep talking to us. They are made to be retold and retold and retold and changed. I will make an example that doesn't have anything to do with all of us. I don't know if you've seen the Chaos on Netflix that has just been out in the last weeks. That is a wonderful example of narrating myths that we all know in a completely updated way, if you want.
I get
We just make justice to the myth by telling it again and again, and telling it in our own way.
And being a scholar of myths, I am incredibly annoyed when people tells me, but in this story, maybe not a story from me, a story from someone else. In this story, they didn't have their mythology correct because they changed this detail. I get extremely annoyed by this, because it's not how mythology works. The ancient always changed mythology. And so when I am really, really annoyed with someone saying, but this mythological detail is not correct, I usually go and research and find a very obscure source in which that single detail is correct, and I usually find it. Well, that's the point.
whatever
That was my fear, that someone like grabbed my neck, like, that's not like this. That's not, that's not how you do it. It's not like, yeah, but people were like glad, even if I did something like a bit wrong with my point of view. A feminist and point of view, for example, or more inclusive, like, they're happy because they exist. They don't care if it's not exact. They don't care at all. Like, do it. I had to search the legitimacy. I had to fight to tell people I have the right to tell those story, even if I was born and raised in France. And I had this fear of literally someone grabbing my neck, like, what are you doing? And no, when I went to Algeria, people were very proud, like, do everything, do what you want. The most important thing is that we exist and that it doesn't fade away.
Well, we hope that it's going to be like this more and more in time, because
I hope.
if we use a story that is not exactly from our country, we do it because we love it. So we're going to put it together with our own stories, and in the end, the result will be richer.
And this takes me to another thing that it's not what we're talking right now about, but it's linked to it, and it's a thing that worries me a lot. I thought a lot about this, which is, in the same way in which now we have this globalizing melting pot in which we can talk about cultures that are far from ours, we can talk about mythology, folklore, legend, which are not those of our country. On the opposite side, there is the problem of the accusation of cultural appropriation, to the point that if I decide to write something, a fantasy book based on Italian folklore, nobody will have anything to say about that. But if I want to go and write something different, for example, since I am a scholar of religions, I studied a lot the voodoo religion because I find it fascinating. If I wanted to write a novel with second generation Haitian character living in Milan and talking about the voodoo religion in a fantasy setting, I know for certain that I would be heavily criticized, especially I have to say, by the new generations, which are more sensitive to this, no, seeing that. But you are not a descendant of Haitians. You don't have any right to talk, to tell stories about that culture, and this is something to think about.
I think you have to. I am looking for the better word, the best word in English. You have to put it in as I said, as an act of love, something that you do because you met that culture in your life and you love it, and as an homage. Obviously, there's always going to be someone maybe that will criticize it, but in the end, there's always going to be someone that will criticize any work of art for a million of reasons. So if we worry about those critics, we don't write anything.
But this would be a criticism coming from a whole culture, not just from individuals.
It depends.
That's what scares me.
But you have to. I think you have to put your own perspective on that. I'm thinking. I don't know. To make a famous example, think American Gods. Gaiman used a lot of gods from a lot of mythologies, and it manages to do it inside his own culture. Obviously, I think if you do it with respect and with love, most people will feel it, and we can't do more than that.
You have much more faith in humanity than me.
Yeah,
I will like that's it.
That's a touchy subject for my English skills. So I would just say that
I can help you. I can help you translate.
Okay. I think that's a real problem, because I had the problem in Confluence, like this one. Sometimes French writer, when they don't they want to do something new, like we did all those things, I want to do something new, so they go to vacation in Thailand or in Cambodia, and they 3 months later they published a book about a fantasy inspired by those vacation. And I found this very disrespectful. And sometimes they base their research with colonial material. For example, in Nigeria, you have like 50 wilayas region, and each of them have traditional gown costumes. And when you find the first archive you found is postal card, old ancient postal card from the time when France was in Algeria, and they're just a bunch of different accessories, like all mixed up, and it doesn't make any sense. And you have, if you don't have this will, this intent to really search, to go look for it, you can very just transmettre, continuer ce colonial gaze, like continue. Go.
Yeah, you can contribute to the perpetuation of this colonial gaze
and stereotypes. And so if you do it really really well, and you bring something to the world, something new, and a new gaze with love. I would love to see those movies. There's a lot of a movie or theater plays about Algeria that was written by French people with a collaboration with Algerians, who permitted to bring something new to the world. And there is some stuff who just continues to bring stereotypes. So we have there is a nuance, but nowadays social media doesn't work on nuance. You have to have a very polarized opinion. So
that's one of the big problems, because there is everything needs to be white or black, and reality is not white or black. Reality is a million of shades of gray.
the important is the intent and the intelligence, because you can love but do it in the stupid way. So you have to.
Very true. Very, very
Yeah,
true.
you have to the way I understand it is that basically you're people are going to be more watchful of
Yeah,
what you're going to be
that's not a
doing,
bad thing. That's not a bad
which is a
thing.
good thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, you
Uh,
can be, a superficial tourist, or you can be a keen traveler, and
yeah.
that's the whole
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
there's a whole there's a unfortunately a big and an old Orientalism literature, speaking for the French speaking space, this kind of naive and
Yeah.
kind of unrespectful books have been done to death.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
that's
also why
very.
today
Yeah.
people want
Mm.
something different.
That's very unfair, because I know that some books that like are very colonial gaze and Orientalism in fantasy, like they sell a lot of copies because people want that. And when you do something more authentic, like people are like, oh, but I read it, but I was waiting for the the uh, all the cliches. I wanted to travel, I wanted to see that, and I wanted, like, yeah, but that's not my culture. That's not. I'm not a. Non, j'allais dire, je suis pas le routard. Genre, je suis pas un guide de voyage.
Yeah, I'm not a traveling agency.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
sometimes the people want the same story exactly like it's already been told, what is the purpose of telling the same story in the same way? It happened to me that when my book about Ariadne and the Minotaur was out. A lot of people liked it. Other people said, well, I was a bit disappointed because there is not just the point of view of Ariadne, there's also the point of view of this other character, which is not in the myth. It was one of the prisoners that just get given to the Minotaur as a sacrifice. Yes, but if I wanted to tell the same story in the same way, there was no point. I think it's up to the reader. There are some that are, if you want, more open and eager to hear new stories, and others that want, in a way, the same food served to them.
It's the McDonald's mentality.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of it's funny because it kind of resonates with one of my questions. I don't know if you people still have a lot of time to give us, but I was wondering. So we were talking about how we there are people may want the same stories all over again, or a blend version of the cultural backgrounds or references you're proposing. And one of my questions was, did you experience actual or induced pressures from the publishing world to adapt whole or part of your books that were heavily inspired by specific cultural or literary heritage into a more like bland, usual kind of story or kind of environment, so that it may seem more easy to sell?
Well, no, actually, like usually, luckily, there is more interest now in Italy for again our own folklore or settings that are actually Italians. We are lucky enough that we are working with publishers that are letting us quite free in that sense. Maybe in the past something happened, but it was more about sensitive topics, as when it happened to write about LGBT characters in a before this, in a, let's say 10, 12, 15 years ago, it was more difficult to write that kind of character, mainly because in Italy there's a misconception that is very common and is luckily changing now. There is that fantasy or speculative fiction is usually is for children. It's for teenagers, and so if you write stories with characters that are adult or that do adult things, sometimes you can have problems, or you can end up in the young adult section of the library, simply because there is not an adult fantasy section of the library. And I'm not talking about romance, sex, or these kind of things. I'm talking in general, in a broader sense.
Yeah, let's say that the main problem we have as Italian fantasy writers is to be taken seriously. This is the actual problem. The actual problem in Italy. That is the cultural prejudice against fantasy is strong. It's been strong for decades, forever. It's changing now. It's something that's changed. But started to change.
Fingers crossed.
But during my lifetime, when I started writing, just the fact that at the beginning Italian fantasy writers were extremely rare. When I started, that was 20 years ago. It was possible to count us on the fingers of two hands. No, now the things changed a lot, but it's a process that it's ongoing right now.
When I was a child or a teenager, I can't remember finding Italian fantasy writer in the bookstores. Most of my readings back then were English, American, and occasionally something else. But Italian writers have been starting to be out just in the last
20 years,
20
years
or so. 20, 30, let's say.
I remember an Italian book I really liked. I don't know the name in Italian, but it was from Silvana De Mare.
Yes,
one of the first.
She was one of the very few translated abroad. It's true. It's true.
It's everywhere in France. It's very a classic. For my part, I think what's difficult is because I bring I don't know, something new to the paysage éditorial.
The publishing
landscape. I don't know.
Yeah, to the industry. You brought something new to the industry.
Yeah, because you don't have that much fantasy writer from minorities and who wrote about North Africa. It's that doesn't exist. It's not just me. And so I did for my first book. I will do it in a different kind of way with my second project. But I'm more than that. I work like 10 years as a physiotherapist in pediatric clinic. I'm specialized in biomechanics. I work with exoskeleton. I don't know how to say it in English. Exoskeleton.
I don't know, suits, mechanical suits. Kind of. That's like an arm, like a mech, mechanoid thing, exoskeleton. Things that are designed to enhance people's strength.
Yeah.
So we know who to ask if we're gonna need information on these topics for a book. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's always making network.
With pleasure. And I work like six years in mental health for teenager yard. So yeah, I'm more than just my heritage, and I want to I want to explore a different field. And sometimes I don't know if it's me or if it's the publishing world, but it's like, you did this thing, very new, like can you do it again and again, and like you put it in a box, and sometimes like when people ask me question, I'm like, yeah, it's like dance monkey dance, I don't know how to put it more in a more clever way, but
it's eloquent.
sometimes it's difficult to pass this and show the people that you're not just a writer who can retell tales that you don't know about.
Okay. Just checking if you have other questions.
Mm.
Okay, we've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes now.
Realize,
We're struggling with a hungry cat that starts to. So if you see us wriggling because of that,
someone thinks that it's dinner time.
But people are getting interested. People are
Oh.
asking where to buy Italian
yeah,
fantasy
we would like
works,
to
and
know because it's very difficult. Like usually, even Italian public usually prefers
Yeah.
English, Anglo-Saxon books or foreign books in general, anything but Italian. Now again, things are slowly changing, but yes, it's more difficult in that sense.
Yeah.
And to be published abroad is very difficult for Italian writers unless you are having like a incredible success. Then again, it's a long process. You need an agent, and
Even if me and you, we are being translated in foreign languages, but
Oh, yeah.
quite
hopefully,
weird.
little
Quite
by little,
weird.
hopefully.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
tell it?
Yeah. No, like Ariadne has been the Curse of Ariadne has been bought in Turkey. So I don't know when it will be published. I think before the end of the year, but I still don't have precise information, so I can't say more.
And the first book of my Damned trilogy has been bought in Hungary. So I'm gonna be translated in Hungarian,
Hungarian,
a
okay.
language I cannot even
It's-
start to conceive.
It's
how-
difficult to get to the if you want to the like to English speaking
No,
countries. It's
English
almost
market. It's a vertical wall. You have to climb with your bare fingers.
well, we'll see. Again,
I would,
let's
I
hope
would,
things
I have
change.
to say on the opposite, I would love, absolutely love to read more French fantasy because
Oh.
it's very rare for it to come to Italy. And in the past years, I've read this saga written by Christelle Dabot,
Yeah, La Passion.
yeah,
and that has been translated in Italian, and I was astonished by it. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. I want more of this. If this is French Italian French literature, I want more. Please translate.
we are okay. Yeah, there's a few of us who are working on setting bridges between the different publishing countries. It's a tedious process because for many reasons. But
The
funny
timing of
thing,
publishing is always super slow. Geological eras are slow.
it's very slow. And the funny thing is, if you talk about Christelle Dabo was translated in almost a ton of languages before she was translated in English, like Russian, Turkish, Hungarian, I think too.
No, and I'm not surprised at all.
But it's usually
Yeah.
like
And she opened doors to other French
Yeah.
writers.
So yeah, but so yeah, there are a lot of things to read. We at Hikaya are also reading a lot of very good Italian books and writers. Yours, obviously, but we talked about this a lot. But a lot of others, a lot of very good fantasy and sci-fi all around honestly, all around the Mediterranean world is our immediate field of expertise. But worldwide, there are things that are being done and so there's a real buildup of synergy between different non-English speaking countries to promote, and I hope to promote a more diverse sci-fi and fantasy. And I really hope the French publishers are going to hop on this. We're gonna yes.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Because when I'm fed with American culture, honestly, even in cinema and in literature, I don't know the word consume it anymore, and I think I'm fed up this imperialism because when you consume in just this language, if you have a view of life, view of everything that's like very biased, and it's very sad because in Europe, like we have proximity with a lot of different countries with a rich and ancient culture, and it's very sad, especially in fantasy and science fiction, because I don't just want to know how they view their future. I don't care. I want to see other people work.
Yeah, at this point, okay. I think we're gonna end this soon. What I propose is that each one of you, if you want to talk about projects you have or any things you want to talk about, anything really you want to share with the viewers about your work, about conventions you're going to go to or anything, I'm gonna let you do that, and then we're gonna close the talk, I think.
I think if I have to mention all the ideas I have in my mind right now, we're gonna need another hour, and I don't want to torture you with that. Let's say that I am exploring different things. I'm going back to things that I love, the kind of folklore that I love, but experimented with different styles. For example, I always use the third person, the limited third person, because it's my favorite, but this time I'm using the first person. Why? Because the character said so. So usually I obey what the characters say, because they know the story better than me. I would like to go back to urban fantasy in the future, but right now I'm working more on historical settings, trying to blend history and fantasy, and it's still at the beginning, so I don't want to say more for for good luck, but this is just a little piece of the chaos that I have in my mind right now. I'm not gonna torture you more.
I am still under contract for my new trilogy, which is my retelling of the myth of Orpheus. And the second book is gonna be out for this Christmas, and so now I'm about to write a third book, which is gonna be out next year. After that, I still have to make propositions to my publishing houses. I have two or three different ideas. One is about another piece of Italian literature, but another one, which would be my favorite actually, was a fantasy retelling of the life of Hieronymus Bosch, the painter. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an idea that I'm thinking about for many years, and I would really like to write that story.
Okay.
For my part, so I'll show my book. That's it. Because it's a pretty book.
Yes, it is. I've seen the cover online. Yeah.
Yeah. So this book is for a teenager and young adults. And the thing is, when I wrote this book, I was like, yeah, I did it. That's it. I wanted to exist fantasy inspired by my cultural heritage and go bye. But people asked me if other books about North African mythology existed. I was like, no. And there was a lot of children, middle school children, who wanted to read it, but they were like too little, and they wanted to read very, very, very hard. I was like, no, because I don't want to disgust you from books, because it's too big. And they was like stuttering at every phrase of the beginning. So I was like, no, put this. And I had a question from moms also. So I was like, yeah, I want to write something for all those children. That's it. So it's under contract. I don't have to write, I think, to tell more about it. But we'll see new things next year.
That's really cool. Okay. Meanwhile, we're going to see you in conventions in France, in signatures, I guess.
Yeah, okay. I have a manuscript who's due next week. So after next week, it doesn't exist. Like, yeah, but I have a convention.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. So okay, I think we're gonna close this now. I really want to thank all of the people who came to listen to us chit chat um, about writing in books and heritage. This was really cool, everybody. Thank you, and Yasmine, Luca, and Sara for doing this. That was our first. There's going to be one live talk each week, and next week we'll be talking about a whole different subject, but still important. That we will be talking about science fiction and fantasy conventions and festivals, and how do we organize the literary scene with people whose job it is. So we'll be
How to
shifting
be more
this
inclusive.
subject
No,
a
no,
lot.
that's
And we'll communicate more about that both on the Hikaya and the Intergalactic accounts. So stay tuned. We thank you, everybody. We're gonna close the live now. So bye bye. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very
Read
much.
book.
Lovely. Thank you.
Read books. We're gonna give all the reference to your works, people, on our accounts, so people are gonna be able to check out all the wonderful things you've written. My English is going astray.
After an hour
And
and a
until
half,
next time, see
Right.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.